Good evening. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who made tonight's program possible, Dr. Kevin Duplashane and Disco Dickey. The exhibition, Bridging the Mississippi Spans Across the Father of Waters, is presented by the Haney Family Foundation and Wrightmore, Dehart, Dupuy, and Hutchison LLC certified public accountants. Tonight is special because it's a celebration of the exhibition and accompanying publication, Bridging the Mississippi Spans Across the Father of Waters, photographs by Philip Gould. I'm excited to introduce Philip in advance of his gallery tour. He was the 2009 winner of the Michael P. Smith Memorial Award for Documentary Photography and has called Louisiana his home since 1974. His most recent notable book projects include Ghosts of Good Times, Louisiana Dance Halls, Past and Present, The Public Art of Robert Dafford, and Soul Exchange, The Paintings of Dennis Paul Williams, all by UL Press. Among his numerous exhibition credits, several stand out as important cultural moments. He's no stranger to exhibiting here at the Hilliard and contributed to A. Hayes Town, the architectural image of Louisiana, Visions of the Tradition, 40 Years of Festivals Acadiens, and others. Additionally, his Louisiana's Capitals, The Power and Beauty, was on view at the New Orleans Museum of Art and Old State Capitol in 1995 and 1996, respectively. And Cajun music in Zydeco cannot be forgotten. It toured between the Field Museum of Natural History, the Virginia State Museum, and others at the close of the last century. And with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Philip Gould.
Thank you, Ben. It's a wonderful ritual we have here. I appreciate everyone tuning in to see this exhibit, Bridging the Mississippi. I want to talk a little bit about bridges on the Mississippi before we get started and give you sort of a background a little bit. I'm sure everyone has a specific idea of a bridge or bridges on the Mississippi, perhaps a bridge that they know because it's close to them, all this kind of thing. When I think of bridges on the Mississippi, I tend to see it all as a 2,300-mile long museum of American bridge architecture. You know, the detail of driving the distance to see the whole museum exhibit is one thing. Bridges on the Mississippi range from the oldest one, 1874, the Eads Bridge in St. Louis, to the ultra-modern, beautiful crossings that are two of them in Minneapolis. One of them replaced an interstate bridge that had fallen into the river there. I also think of bridges in a lot of other ways. I think of bridges as stitches connecting America's national fabric. I also see bridges as a project like this as a way of a different kind of prism to view the country. I also want to talk a little bit about the history of bridges on the Mississippi, because I think it's important for people to understand about what went on early on. I'd have to say that Bridges on the Mississippi is the other all but untold story about America in the mid-19th century. People don't remember it. We remember other things, the Civil War, slavery, the railroads, everything. But it was a big deal. Actually, in the 1850s and 1860s, there was a convergence, if you will. One constant, couple variables, and one massive obstacle. The constant itself was the river, mighty Mississippi River, an amazingly large body of water that flowed very powerfully, often very dangerously, over land that was less than solid, and so it became a really hard body of water to cross, and it frustrated people for years. The variables, one is the evolving desire of the railroad industry to cross the Mississippi River. They wanted to participate in westward expansion to the Pacific coast, and the fact that they could not efficiently cross the river was a real problem for them. The other variable was the coming advent of the development of steel as a metal for bridge construction. Steel is far stronger, and iron, which they had used before, was very soft for this, and so steel provided the difference. It made bridges possible. The first bridge, I'm sorry, the other part that is the obstacle is really also interesting, because from 1820 till 1850 or so, the Mississippi River was dominated by the riverboat industry. In fact, all interior rivers were dominated by them. They literally had a lot. They controlled all commerce, and they controlled all politics regarding the river, travel on the river, and they also enjoyed massive popularity amongst the people there. People loved they loved various riverboats and things. And this was a very powerful force that was basically trying to defend an antiquated industry. When trains came on, they were just so much more efficient, so much faster. So you had this real clash for decades. The prevailing thinking back in the 1850s about bridges was probably summed up in one paper that was written at the time. I'll quote, "Bridges across navigable rivers are public nuisances, navigational hazards, unconstitutional restraints on interstate commerce, and even worse, they were crimes against nature and for some people against God." This was just ungodly to be building these bloody bridges, you know. The first bridge, first railroad bridge, I should say, across the Mississippi River was in Davenport, Iowa, connecting that town with Rock Island, Illinois. And it was built in 1856, opened, and was running quite fine, transporting trains across for 2 weeks. On the 15th day, a riverboat named the Effie Afton sailed up under the bridge, heading upstream, lost power once it was past the bridge, and floated back down into the bridge, catching fire, burning the bridge, sinking the boat, and burning the bridge. The owner of the riverboat company decided to sue the railroad, and claiming the bridge was a material obstruction to navigation and should not be allowed. And so this was, at the time, this was a huge controversy, and there was a ton at stake. I mean, you know, if we have riverboats preventing trains from crossing the river, that's a real problem. One of the people working on the defense team representing the railroad was Abraham Lincoln, who was already interested in politics. He had a very natural way of talking, using common parlance. And his final argument at the close of the trial was that one man has as much a right to cross a river safely as another man has the right to sail up and down the river underneath the bridge. And so that simple sentence became the standard for all bridge construction. And after that, the spans between piers were much wider, the spacing was much wider, thus making the technology even more important. That steel became the key and essential part of bridge construction back then. By the 1870s, the public's opinion had changed, perhaps grudgingly. One newspaper article, editorial in a St. Louis paper, wrote, "We must face the undeniable trend favoring trains. The geography has been undone by technology. Geography has been undone by technology. That rivers run only where nature pleases, but railroads run wherever man pleases." They just threw it, you know, they eventually, the riverboat people threw up their hands and said, okay, enough is enough. just in talking about the photography, the approach to the photography, I tried to blend architecture, landscape with a sense of humanity. The three really go hand in hand, and if you don't include one, it just seems incomplete. And I think it's very important. I went 3 different times all the way up to the mouth of the river, to the headwaters of the river at Lake Itasca, and worked often going back and forth along the river. So I got to see it in winter, spring, summer, fall. Anyway, I think we're ready to begin. I'm going to walk through and talk about a few of the photographs. And so I'm just going to walk over here. We've got this state-of-the-art rig here. We're all set to go. I started the project flowing upriver since I know Louisiana best. And I'm going to start with a photograph that really speaks to the humanity that's surrounding it. This is a photograph under the Crescent City Connection bridges in New Orleans. The gentleman's name is Raymond Manson. He comes out each morning to pray when he lines under the bridges. He told me when I was talking to him that I align myself with bridges in prayer to align myself to God. I was just like, whoa, that's just wonderful. And so, very simple man, rides his bicycle up to the levee, everything like that. Let's go over here. We're going to go to the next photograph. This is the Crescent City Connection here. 180,000 cars a day cross this bridge. This is a view at night of the rush hour, but you can see it's quite an amazing array of ramps, bridges, crossings, cityscapes, everything like that. I want to go to the next couple photographs here. These are the Huey P. Long, the expanded Huey P. Long. Huey P. Long Bridge, built in 1935, opened a couple months after Huey Long was assassinated, built by him. Was at the time almost, very modest. It was primarily a railroad bridge. They added vehicle lanes on each side. The lanes were 9 feet apart, and they were basically all but dangerous. The joke in New Orleans over the years was that more people prayed novenas on the Huey P. Long Bridge than they did in all the churches of New Orleans. The one below here is a shot of the railroad bridge. The railroad bridge to me is just as important and significant as the span across the river itself. This span, built in the 30s, is 4.5 miles from ground to ground, and I just love it. It's so antiquated and heavy industrial. Going up to the top, we can see that you have the original crossing. This was the original structure for the railroad, and you have lanes on either side. They expanded it out and built the bridge using the exact same profile, maintaining the visual integrity and beauty of the bridge. That's just really great. So we're going to go over here to a few more shots. This is a photograph of the Sunshine Bridge, the proverbial bridge to nowhere, was its nickname when it was built, opened in 1964. I just happened to be under the bridge one morning, foggy morning, and caught headlights of trucks and everything crossing over it, and I love the atmosphere of this photograph. We can move to I was down at the riverside photographing just whatever's along the river, and 2 gentlemen pulled up in an old beat-up truck and pulled out all their poles and started fishing, and they didn't have this pole in its holder more than a couple of minutes. Then a fish bit took the bait, and so they had to reel it in. the gentleman here came out to the river and just literally grabbed it and hauled it out of the water. It's a 30-pound catfish. I talked about bridges being the framing of urban settings, river walks, everything. That's the aesthetic piece. Baton Rouge is a classic example. This is the I-10 bridge, Horace Wilkinson Bridge. And I was there, and suddenly I saw this group of young ladies come down, and this young lady here was going to a prom that night, and she wanted to get photographed in her prom dress. Taquencia Azard in Baton Rouge, and I thought it was perfect. This is people, all four of them. I'm going to keep on going here. I want to walk down to a bridge here. This is in Natchez, and this is more about light and about clouds and the potential of photography in the middle of the day. This is a scene of two bridges crossing in Natchez. It's a beautiful view from the bluff here, but I just love the way the light hit the spans because of the clouds, the way the clouds were. We're going to keep on going. I'm going to walk back here for a little bit. I want to stop here real quick at this photograph. This is taken near Greenville, Mississippi, in a very rural area, and this is a very modernist bridge. It looks great, but I find the contrast with the bridge and this old fireworks sign, which probably dates back for decades, is a wonderful cultural statement, cultural/architectural statement. The contrast. This is the landscape speaking, and I saw that and I said, holy smokes, that's wonderful. So I sat there for hours trying to get the right shot. We're going to keep on going down. A bridge in Memphis. I want to come here. This is a bridge at the convergence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. It's at the very southern tip of Illinois. You can see this is Illinois here. In the foreground is Missouri, and in the background is Kentucky. And I just love this scene where you see so much of how the landscape is, but you see this very majestic, although very narrow bridge crossing the river there. I'm gonna come over here to St. Louis. This is the oldest bridge on the river. It's called the Eads Bridge, named in honor of James Buchanan Eads, who actually built it. He was commissioned by the people in St. Louis. He was a very popular and had a reputation for success in whatever he accomplished. Eads never went to engineering school. He had never built a bridge, but they still trusted him to do this. And what is interesting here is this all looks like replicas of Roman arch architecture. This is the cutting edge stuff. This is steel construction here. This is the first bridge to use that sort of thing, and it made navigation safely underneath possible. The steel is what distinguished this bridge. We can go to the left a little bit, please. And you can see above here, this shows the intricacy of all the metal pieces. They use a double arch to create strength, and you can just see it. It's just so intricate, and that's what they had to do to get the strength, the necessary strength to do it. Again, everyone would remember the Effie Affit incident, and no one wanted to have another bridge catastrophe with a riverboat. So these piers on the bridge are 500 feet apart. Enough room. Shall we keep on going? If I told you there was a town in Missouri by the name of Louisiana, I don't know if you would believe me or not, but there is. Beautiful little hamlet along the river. This is a cemetery on a hill overlooking the river. I love how you can see it all the way down for miles. And this is a railroad bridge, and then this is a older bridge. This bridge, sadly, has been torn down and replaced by a very standard modern bridge. But I love this view. I think it's one of the best on the river. Let's keep on rolling. This is another view of the same bridge that was torn down. You can see how high it is to match the bluff. It was just great. There's so many of these bridges built in the 30s were just classics. Very narrow classics. They were too narrow, and that was their doom. Let's keep on going. We're coming up to Burlington, Iowa, heading north. This is mile 948, we could say, of the 2,300-mile museum. Anyway, this is a cable stayed bridge in Burlington, single tower, and I just love the beautiful curves, the beautiful lines, the sense of landscape, and I love these two dudes out here early in the morning. I don't know if they're about to race each other or they just happen to be together, but I have this philosophy that the landscape often speaks eloquently, and I think we have a case here. We're going to keep on going. Let me just stop real quickly at this photograph here if we can too. This is the same bridge in Burlington. These are state highway department people, and they are testing the viability of this giant concrete pier with a hammer. Just clinging on it. By the way, it sounds, they can tell if the pier is strong or solid. We're going to come up to another shot, which is one of my favorites from the project. This is in Davenport, Iowa. This is the Centennial Bridge, built in 1940, and that was the centennial year for the founding of Davenport. There's a baseball park, minor league baseball park, just at the foot of the bridge, and I sat up there to get a shot of the diamond and everything like this, and suddenly this gentleman here hit a 3-run homer, and this gentleman here, who's a Giants baseball fan, stood up and started cheering, and I just said, holy, this is wonderful. So you really have a moment of, this is a serendipitous moment. This is humanity waving its arms. So we're going to keep on going. I wanted to go to this photograph. I had talked about Abraham Lincoln being one of the attorneys in the F.D. Afton case. This is the site where the bridge was. There's now another bridge there. They have a statue here honoring him. The local lore has it that he would go out often and just look at how the river flowed and just checking for eddies and any kind of disturbances and this kind of thing, just to get a sense of what was at stake here. And because this trial was so controversial, he often came out to the river just to get a little quiet. And this is a young kid there who saw him and asked him what he was doing, and he said, I came out here to get a little less opinion and a little more fact. And so that is in the statue, and it speaks to his sense of, it speaks to his skill to communicate, I think. So let's just keep on going. One of my favorite projects in this, one of my favorite bridges, I should say, in this project was the construction of this bridge in Savannah, Illinois. And you can see the old bridge there, and this is the new one being built. The folks who were building this let me on a barge, so I was tugged, so I was able to go where I wanted. I just caught them lifting this one piece of an arch that was going to be lifted and placed right here. And you can see all the stuff that's on it. You can see, I mean, everything. It's all there for you. We're going to keep on going here. This is that same piece right here being lifted into place. You see all these gentlemen here. They all have safety ropes and stuff, although they probably have been up on bridges like that, spots like that for so many years that they don't even think about it. Anyway, so they're just sliding into position. We go back out here. This is the new bridge, and this is the old bridge. Being all the approaches were taken away and set for demolition. So we are going to go and look at another photograph. This is the demolition of the old bridge that you saw there. 375 charges going off simultaneously brought the old bridge down. I love this because the cloud is what defines the structure, the shape of the old bridge. I love the oval. I love this sense of landscape, everything. This is a photograph that I was very happy to have taken. We're going to come over here to these photographs here. This is a bridge, the Black Hawk Bridge in Lansing, Iowa. Lansing is a small hamlet in northeastern Iowa along the river, just downstream from the Minnesota border. This is one of the most distinctive old bridges built in 1931 or so, and it has a very interesting design to it. If an engineer might look at that bridge and say, wait, that doesn't make sense, because you can see three pieces, this piece here, this piece here, and there's no lateral connection here for strength. It sits on its own. Crossing this bridge is amazing. To say you're going through a time warp would be an understatement. This bridge is so popular in the area, people come from all around to drive over to see it. The town's identity is so tied to the bridge. And so I wanted to photograph the two together. People always worry that the bridge is going to be torn down. There's problems with its location for navigation by towboats. But one person described this bridge, they're saying this bridge is like, to people in town, the town of Lansing, this bridge is like a great-grandmother. You know that she's not going to be there forever, and you just want to enjoy her while she's there. And I thought that was very succinct. We're going to go a little bit this way. A couple other shots of the bridge in Lansing. You can see clearly the architectural design of this bridge, and then, again, it's a backdrop. It's the framing of a setting along the river. 4th of July party goers. We're going to keep on going here. This is the Canadian Pacific Rail Bridge in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Another beautiful old structure. Actually, it opened in 1876, a couple years after the Eads Bridge. And you can see this wonderful turning. This is a rotating bridge. It's a swivel bridge. And you can see this is the original technology that they used back in the 19th century to support and turn the bridge. Massively heavy. I love that. We're going to keep on going here. A couple bridges in St. Paul, Minnesota. This is a rainbow bridge, a beautiful Art Deco bridge downtown. This is an old train bridge, a lift bridge coming over here. This is a bridge in St. Paul as well, the Wabasha Bridge. I looked at that and I think this is a perfect bridge for returning armies, for old armies marching back from war. Beautiful, beautiful pomp and circumstance. We're going to come to two bridges in Minneapolis that I think are very important, two photographs. The first one is a view of both the old Stone Arch Bridge built in 1883. It's now a pedestrian crossing. This bridge was the key to opening up the Northwest to railroad traffic and linking the Northwest to the Eastern Seaboard. Huge impact on the city and everything. This bridge here, the St. Anthony Falls I-35 bridge, replaced the one that had fallen into the river in a tragic accident back in 2007. This one has, first of all, it's high tech. There's all kinds of sensors in it that if there's any kind of problem, people will know very quickly. But I also love it for its beautiful lines. It's just so elegant, and I think contrasts quite well here. Got another view of that same new bridge right here. This is looking at it from below, and you can just see that there's beautiful feminine forms and lines here. So I go back and forth. I look at this and I say, is that just beautiful lines, or are those the fingertip thighs of a brontosaurus or a Tyrannosaurus rex? They almost look like dinosaurs in a way. We're going to go to the final photograph that I want to show everybody. It's over here. This is taken at the headwaters of the Mississippi River, Lake Itasca. There's a series of boulders that people cross here. Some people will say that's a bridge, that's a crossing. And those who are a bit stiffer about it, there is a log that crosses the creek 50 feet down, so that may be the first bridge that crosses. But I just love this setting here. This is the most wonderful, iconic setting for a massive river. I have been told that over 500,000 people visit this each year. I think we're going to stop now, and we're going to have some questions, and I'm going to walk over here.
Just now.
What?
It's up.
Oh, perfect. So Ben,
Well,
how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. It's fantastic to hear it all. And so what we'd like to do is we send an email out ahead of time, and we have some questions, and there might be some questions coming in from Instagram or Facebook, but I thought that perhaps we might start with some of the questions we already have.
Sure.
I was curious, was there an experience or a specific inspiration for this project?
Yes, there was. Actually, it happened at the bridge in Cairo, where we're crossing where the Ohio and the Mississippi meet. I was traveling late one night with Robert Dafford, actually, and cold, 15 degrees out. It was late, and we drove across that bridge. I had never crossed one, and there were all kinds of light beams coming off of trucks, bouncing everywhere. It was the most amazing scene. But I was tired. We needed to get going, and I blew it off. And that experience of not taking a photograph is what led to the idea of this project. So yes, there was a very important photograph that I didn't take.
But the Cairo image is one of my favorites in the exhibition. So
Thank you.
I'm glad that the project happened, even if that photo didn't happen.
Okay.
So another one we have here is, over the course of your photographic career, technology and approaches to photography have changed a lot. You're no longer in a darkroom. Can you tell me a little bit about the change over your career, or maybe just this project?
Well, I think when you're photographing film, you're living in the element of uncertainty. You don't know really how the image will turn out. You hope, you bracket, you do various exposures to make sure you get the right frame. With digital photography, you know instantly whether it's successful or not, and you can do that. So I like digital photography. People need to be very careful about it, though, and they need to back up all digital images once, twice, 3 times, just, you can never back it up too much. And as long as you have the image somewhere, whether it's in the cloud or on hard drives, DVDs, in multiples, and I think you're okay. But I love the digital photography. There's so much more you can do with it.
Well, you use drones for some of these images,
Some of these
right?
photographs were taken with drones. You can't photograph bridges unless you can get up over them in various ways. The shot cover of the book of the East Bridge was taken with a drone. You can't see that shot unless you are looking down. And you can't look down from too high, just a little bit above.
And it's beautiful, and I really love the fact that that's there. And this project is so much about the advance of technology.
Yes.
That I love that there's that element underlying the whole project, that you experimented with new technology, much like people who build bridges did, and I love that.
Well, the drone was new for me. I had a lot of adventures with those. But, I was learning as I was photographing. Let's just leave it at that.
No.
I lost one. Okay? It flew away. I couldn't find it. There we go.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's okay.
That's awesome. And so your process involves a great deal of travel and waiting for the right moment.
Sure.
Can you walk me through a little bit about how you decide when the photo happens?
Anytime it looks like it's promising, I set up the shot in Davenport where I set up with the baseball field and everything. I had it set up, I had cable release, and I figured something would happen sooner or later. There's a famous National Geographic photographer by the name of Sam Abel. Went to a program by him, a workshop by him, and he talked about how you find the setting and you let the photograph walk into it. And that way it's far better composed and all this kind of thing. And I think that's a classic case of that. So, there's always the right moment, as Henry Carnegie's song would say.
I love it. And so, this is an opportunity for you to complain publicly about me, potentially.
No chance.
But was there anything that didn't make the exhibition that you lament?
You can't go there. There's a lot of other photographs in the book, and you and I sat down and we chose what was the best representation of the spirit of the subject. And so, no.
That's much more mature than me.
You can't live in regret.
That's awesome.
Oh well,
that's great. And so here's another one, and you've spoken a little bit about this already with Raymond and with the woman who was getting her photo taken at the bridge, but taking someone's photograph is often fairly intimate, and you're presented with the opportunity to photograph strangers. Like, how do you build that relationship or deal with that?
Well, it depends. When I photographed these two gentlemen under the bridge with the fish, I was there first. They showed up, and I just said, "You mind if I take some pictures of you fishing?" He said, "Oh, sure, go ahead." That's simple. I was photographing these 4 people in Baton Rouge were just there. I just walked up to them. I told them what I was up to, and I said it would be okay to take a picture of them. And sure. So if you ask beforehand and just they go back to sort of a more spontaneous way. I like to feel invisible when I'm photographing. I don't want to be a distraction. I want things to happen on their own.
So you introduce yourself and then remove yourself.
Yes.
Okay. And then when you deep dive into a topic like you did for this exhibition, like you do for all your projects really, what does your research process look like? How do you favor accumulating your knowledge?
With this project, I didn't know hardly anything about the bridges on the river. I knew the ones in Louisiana, so it was a lot of research, a lot of learning. I eventually found a place where I could see every bridge across and determine by the history of them or how they looked, whether they were worth checking out. And the other thing too is that I learned so much about the history, which to me is fascinating as I photograph. Got books, read this, talked to these people, talked to those people, that kind of thing. So as I photographed, I also was able to gather a sense of the story.
So records, publications, firsthand knowledge.
Newspaper accounts.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and just as a shameless plug for the Hilliard Art Museum, you supplied us with many of the titles of the books you use for research.
Right.
And if others are interested in the topic in the education area of the exhibition, which wasn't on camera, that's available for people to come and explore the topic.
Yeah.
So
It's great history, and it's not well known.
no, it's not. It's fantastic. I've enjoyed it very much so. Now, and then we have a couple others here at the end, unless something comes in. What was your favorite town to visit? You know, were there repeat visits that you really, really liked?
I have to say Lansing, Iowa was one. I also like Minneapolis. I like that area there. I was very inspired by the bridges there. They're really beautiful, especially the modern ones. But every town had its charm. Every town had a quality to it. Every town I was able to find my favorite restaurant, which I went back to often, or my favorite coffee place, so I became a creature of habit very quickly. And so, but anyone who is curious about all this should go to Lansing, Iowa. I mean, it's really remarkable to see that bridge.
Well, awesome. And so, over the course of this, you've answered a lot of the other questions.
Sure.
Just through our conversation and through your presentation. Greta, were there any questions that weren't addressed that have come in? Just ones that we have addressed? Okay. Well, Philip, I haven't shaken anyone's hand in months, but thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to
You're
hear.
welcome. Thank you, and thank you to everyone at Hilliard for making this possible. Thank you to Haney and Associates. Thank you to Wright, Dehard, Moore, and Hutchison, CPA, for their contribution as well. So,
And thank you, Dr. Kevin Dupleshain and Disco Dickey for the event this evening as well.
all right.
And don't forget, if you love the photos and want a piece of the exhibition, you're more than welcome to come into the gift store and purchase a signed publication by the same name, Bridging the Mississippi Spans Across the Father of Waters. And so, thank you so much, Philip.
You're welcome. Thank you.